At the sixth floor window, the Texas School Book Depository, and a print of Mac Wallace taken from his arrest card. Loy Factor's story of his involvement with the Kennedy assassination was told to Mark Collom in 1971. Mark and Factor were in prison at the time. Collom was in prison for the possession of drugs. Factor was in prison for the murder of his wife. In 1993, over 20 years after their initial meeting, Mark went in search for Factor. Mark was able to find Factor, who was in a hospital at the time. Factor repeated the same story to Mark about his participation in the assassination of President Kennedy. Mark Collom and Glen wrote a book based on Factor's story, The Men on the Sixth Floor. Mark's involvement with Loy Factor
took place over about a 90-day period. During this time, I worked very closely with Loy in a state infirmary. His case was undergoing an appeal. Talking to Loy and saying, well, you know, why are you here? And it took several weeks of just curiosity. And the story unfolded how he became involved with a gentleman who he met at Sam Rayburn's funeral. When his family went there just to see the president, and there was a couple of presidents and a lot of famous people that were there at Bottom, Texas. While he was on the street trying to watch the motorcade, he said that this gentleman, Hispanic gentleman, possibly Cuban gentleman, approached him, started speaking Spanish to him. The only reason that we could understand that was Loy was very dark-skinned, being an Indian, and so when he was approached, it was only natural that evidently Mac Wallace, who was dark-skinned, spoke Spanish, thought that they could communicate together. And Loy told him immediately, I don't speak Spanish, I'm an Indian.
Billy Saul Estes told Madeline Brown that he was at Sam Rayburn's funeral with Mac Wallace. A man closely resembling Wallace can be seen standing on the curve in the crowd. When Madeline asked Billy Saul if he knew Loy Factor, his answer was, do you mean the Indian?
During the course of conversation, Loy was really taken aback by the lack of security. You know, this is really a dangerous situation. I mean, anybody could shoot him. So this is where the conversation got going, and evidently it touched on the marksmanship of Loy. And Loy began, of course, to brag about his shooting ability. And we saw that all through our talking with Loy and interviews, that he would always take the moment when we were talking about his shooting ability, and boy, he'd really like to play that up. So if he kept that same attitude with Malcolm, we could begin to see that how the conversation went. When Loy met Wallace, he had talked and hit up a relationship, had a relationship going there. What impressed Loy was how kind this man was. Loy had all his family there with him, and evidently at that point Mac Wallace pulled out a $20 bill and said, here, it's my treat, go take your family out to dinner. And that really impressed Loy. Loy gave Wallace directions to his home. And Wallace says, I'm always through this part of the country, and I'll maybe come by and visit you sometime. I might have an opportunity to do some odd jobs. He was led to believe that Wallace might someday have a job for him.
He was farm unexpectedly, just drove up one day, and they resumed a conversation. Wallace was interested in seeing how good of a shot Loy was. And Loy said he went into the house. He grabbed a .30-30, as I recall, and they went out to a clearing near their house, and they started plinking at some cans that Wallace would put up on the fence post. And I recall him saying that he shot at a grease gun canister, whatever he was referring to. He remembered the fact that it was a grease gun can, and he just shot that thing every time. And however many shots he fired or whatever ability he displayed, Wallace was impressed.
When he shot the grease gun can, that he was given some money. To my recollection, it was like $2,000.
We decided that another trip to Texas was necessary. We needed to find out who this Wallace was.
On our trip to try to find Loy Factor in Tonkawa, we found out that he was put in the hospital with a serious heart ailment. We went on down to the hospital. We introduced ourselves to the nurses. They told us he was in serious shape, but maybe a visit would be encouraging to him. So we walked in the room. They told him that the reason we were there is that we wanted to do the story. The story about, to find out the truth about all the events that surrounded him. And he said, sure, he was glad to talk. And I said, but in particular, I want to verify the story that you told me of what happened down there in Dallas and about the assassination. I asked him the question, were you there? And he looked at me and he looked at Larry Howard and Ron Atterbury, and I said, now these aren't policemen, they're not FBI. Were you there? And he hung his head and he said, I guess I had a little something to do with it.
Can I show you some pictures and see if you ever recognize who this guy is?
He dressed up too good, don't
You know who that is?
he? Yeah.
Who is that?
Wallace.
We took those photographs out of the library in Dallas,
Yeah.
and we got those come out of his university pictures at the University of Austin. You know who you identified?
Wallace. He the one got killed in Colorado.
He got killed in a car accident.